Can you tell I really like Ford Superdutys? I'm going to go ahead and say it. I think they're the GOAT, the greatest of all time. I mean, let's be honest, it all depends on your context. I mean, if you're looking for power, sure, a 6.7, that's where it's at. But if you're looking for something that pulls pretty good, easy to work on, and pretty darn reliable, I don't think you can get much better than these first-gen Superdutys. I'm really talking about 99 to 04. I hope I don't trigger anybody today. Some people are going to say go for the newer trucks, the 6.7s. Some people are going to say, no, I like the OBS. I like all those trucks. But let me tell you why I think the first-gen Superduty 99 to 03, if you're wanting a diesel, is about the best you can get. And after this, if you think I'm wrong, leave me a comment. Change my mind. First, we have the 2000 model, white F250, four-wheel drive, 5.4 automatic. I know I won't get much love for the 5.4, but it is 2-valve, and it's been a really good farm truck. I beat on that truck harder than any of them, and it just keeps coming back for more. Next is going to be my quote-unquote nice truck. Not nicer than most of you guys probably, but this is my 100,000 mile 7.3 99, late 99, and I tell you what, it won't outpull a 6.7, but I'll get there, I promise. Next is the project truck. This is an early 99. This is a project I'm working on slowly. Kind of a barn find, if you will. This truck's set for 6-8 years, and what happened was the guy decided to rebuild his own transmission, and yeah, it's got all forwards, no reverses. Tell you what, this truck runs out great as long as you don't have to back up. So it's a project. I know old Willard, the white truck, eventually it's going to lay down on me. It's just getting a little bit wore out, and I'm going to turn this into my next daily. But let's get into it. Let's talk about power plants, and let's start it off with probably the least favorable power plant of these three, the 5.4 Triton. Now, I know a lot of guys love to hate this engine, but being a 2-valve, I don't really have variable valve time issues. Replace a few coil packs every once in a while, and if you can get past the spark plug issue, which they've got modern tools that they can put a time set in, or a set in it, they call it, an insert that kind of they machine it out. The spark plug issue isn't that big of a deal anymore. But you can't tell me the 5.4 is complete junk, because I've owned this truck too long and rode it too hard to say that it's not a pretty decent engine. If, in fact, you keep up on your maintenance, which that's going to go for all of them. What I really like about these engines is, although they only develop 250 horsepower, compared to like a LS, they're a long stroke engine, and only 250 horsepower, but 350 foot-pounds of torque. Compared to like a 5.3, you're going to be about the same. You might have 300 horsepower, but you've only got 300 foot-pounds of torque. So this is not really a racing engine, but for a 3/4 ton truck, it doesn't have much horsepower, I'm going to be honest with you, but it has pretty good low-end torque for a little 5.4. I want to say another side note that I had a V10 and a F350 with a 6-speed. Wonderful engine. Good low-end torque again, because a V10 is basically a 5.4 with 2 cylinders added on. And a lot of people don't know that when the 5.4 got variable valve timing up in 2005, the V10 never did. So you can go up to 2010 and get a V10, and it may be a 3-valve, but there's no variable valve timing. Let's go from oldest to newest. Let's go with the E99 truck. I want you to note the distance between the turbo and the top there, the cow. This has got a smaller turbo on it. It's also going to have a smaller high pressure oil pump and injectors, but a wonderful engine. Now let's go to the late 99. You see it's a little tighter up there. This has got the bigger turbo on it. It's got the bigger spiders, which the spiders go from here to here to feed the intakes. It's got 3-inch instead of 2-inch. This would be basically the same engine they ran from late 99 all the way to 03, except for this will have forged rods where the later ones got powdered rods. Not really an issue unless you're going to go over 400 or 500 horsepower, which I don't plan on doing. Now let me talk about the 7.3 a little bit. A lot of people know the 7.3 don't have near the power potential of the 6.7 or even the 6.0 or 6.4. But the things it doesn't have is part of the reason that makes it so great. Cummins guys, don't get mad at me, but we don't have a killer dowel pin, a killer grid heater. Unlike a lot of the newer diesel trucks, we don't have a CP4 to go out. Unlike a Duramax, we don't have problems with the crank key that slips. I can relatively get to the turbo. It's not the easiest thing, but a lot easier than a newer Duramax. And I've put a water pump on this truck compared to a Duramax, and it's not that bad. So all in all, is the 7.3 perfect? No. Like I said, it's kind of low power compared to some of the newer trucks, but there's nothing right here that will kill this engine. The only thing I have done is I took the intake air heater out, but that's not a real common issue. Otherwise, there's nothing you have to do to these engines out of the box to make them reliable. Where a Cummins, yeah, well, fix the killer dowel pin and the grid heater on the 6.7s and you'll have a good engine. These things are very reliable right out of the box. Let's talk transmissions. All these trucks have the R4100 4-speed auto. And although it will fail under high horsepower applications, it's a pretty good transmission. You don't see a whole lot of issues out of it. The ZF6 manual transmission, which I had in my other truck, the V10 that I sold, I really love that 6-speed. My biggest problem with the 6-speed in one of these trucks, and one of the downfalls of these, is they have disc brakes on the back, and Ford put a drum parking brake inside the rear disc, and they're not strong enough for these trucks. That truck had a utility bed. It weighed 11,000 pounds, and the parking brake would not hold it. So I couldn't leave the truck running and just put the parking brake on. I had to shut it off in low gear anytime I got out of the truck, which got kind of old. So let's talk about the Superduty versus the OBS. A lot of you guys love the OBS, and I do too. I think they're wonderful trucks. Cosmetics, the OBS versus this truck, I don't know. That's kind of a matter of opinion. But I do think these Superdutys are very good looking trucks. So let me tell you what I think the Superduty has over the OBS. Let's start with factory tow hooks. Tow hooks were standard on the Superduty. Let's talk about the front end. This being an F350, it's got a Dana 60 front axle, and it is a straight axle. But all Superdutys are straight axle. On the end of the axle, we went to a hub pilot setup, where these nuts do not hold any weight up and down. All these flat nuts do is hold the wheel on. This heavy hub is what holds the weight. Just opinion here, I think this is a stronger setup. Moving in, we also went away from the old spindle and wheel bearing setup to a sealed bearing. So rather than replacing the bearings and races, this is a love-hate thing. This is quicker. You just bolt a new wheel bearing on, but quite a bit more expensive. Moving to the engine compartment, the Superdutys came factory intercooled. One thing I do like about the OBS is that it had the quote-unquote wicked wheel from the beginning, because that's basically what the wicked wheel was a OBS turbo wheel. These late 99s had issues that under high boost loads the turbo wheel would shutter, and so the fix for that was to put an OBS turbo wheel. This has got a wicked wheel 2 in it, which is pretty similar. Some of my favorite improvements are the door and mirror section. Now, like you, I miss the vent windows. They were pretty nice. But I do like the mirror setup on these Superdutys a lot better. The OBS trucks, the mirror was back here because you had the vent window, and the mirror was pretty close to you, and it was hard to get as good of a field of view, where these are more the modern mirrors. The doors on these things, they're bigger, they're heavier. Well, don't let me say they're heavier. Let me show you what I mean. I believe the structure of these doors are heavier, but let's be honest, the sheet metal on a Superduty is thin. But there's some heavy bars behind it, and when you open one of these doors, I mean, I've heard them called vault doors. Door panel. Door panel is a lot nicer on this truck. The door panels don't have near as much problems with the clips and popping out. These door panels have a couple screws, and then there's these hooks that the door panel slides down, and the door panel setup is, in my opinion, much better on the Superduty. If you had an OBS truck, you know, keeping the door panels tight, not easy. And while we're talking about that, let's talk about door handles. Yet to see one of these break. Seen very, very many OBS handles break. Jump over to this truck for a minute. What do we get in the Superduty? 4-door extended cab, not club cab. Just pretty nice. You'll see that first on the Superduty. Now pretty much everybody does it. All 4 doors open. OBS, you had to slide the seat forward and climb through the back. Just the little things that add up. I know we've talked a lot about doors, but one thing I want to mention, these doors are the same from '99 all the way to 2016 till they went to the Lumiduty. And the cab's pretty much the same too. So if you want to put newer door panels or newer interior in these trucks, it can be done. Speaking of the interior, I think the interiors are pretty nice on these trucks. I mean, they're not as nice as the new ones, but got a nice armrest. We've got, and this one's a Lariat, it's got power seats. Like I said, not as fancy as the new trucks, but I tell you what, come a long ways from the old ones. The best thing they added to the Superdutys was cup holders. And I even got extra cup holders. One nice thing about Superdutys, if you want to add a brake controller, they're factory wired. You don't have to run the wires to the back, they're already there. I like this fuse panel cover. It's pretty easy with a thumbnail to take and remove these 4 screws. And it gives you very good access to the fuses and anything else under the dash. Although with the added cameras and tuner and everything, this looks a little busy, but a lot of accessibility under here. The back seats in the Superduty have a lot of room, decent sized door. Me personally, sorry Chevy and Dodge guys, I think the Chevy and Dodge regular crew cabs are too small back here, and I don't think I need a mega cab. I think the Superdutys have it about right. The Superdutys also went to 1 fuel tank instead of a front and rear tank. A lot of people might see that as a bad thing, but I see it as it being a little bit more simple. You don't have that tank switch valve, which I actually had a problem with one on a 91 7.3 IDI, and I made a video and I'll link it right here. Had a problem with the tank selector valve. Before the Superduty, if you wanted to protect the bed sides, you had to buy caps. And the Superdutys came with bed caps from the factory. On the rear of the Superduty, again, we have the Hub Pilot wheels, but we went from a 10 1/4 Sterling, which was a fine rear end, to a 10 1/2, just a little bigger, but a 10 1/4 is plenty heavy. Biggest improvement on the rear of the Superduty is the disc brakes. Although, like I said, I don't like the parking brake. They weren't heavy enough on these trucks. That is one downfall. Although it does give another failure point. The Superduty spare tire had the cable winch, which you could put a tire tool in here and lower the spare tire. Made it a lot easier on the side of the road. Rather than the OBS, you had to get under there and unbolt the tire carrier. Don't get me wrong, I'm not bad-mouthing the OBS. I think they're great trucks. I just think the Superduty is more capable and more comfortable. Now let me make the argument for the first-gen Superduties being better than the newer trucks. Sure, the newer trucks are powerful, but they lack simplicity, which in my opinion means less reliability. The 6.0s can be fixed to be pretty good engines. The 6.4s, I don't know that they can. And the 6.7s are very good engines, but with all the EPA emission stuff strapped onto them, there's a lot of failure points. If you delete the trucks, they're pretty good. I'm not saying that. There's still a lot more computers and stuff in those trucks than there is in one of these. And if you're talking about gassers like the Willard truck here, after this first gen you went to the 3-valve 5.4, and that stayed bad until the 6.2, which I hear are pretty good engines. I wouldn't turn down a 6.2, but I still think the rest of the truck is simpler in the first gens. For example, in the old farm truck here, I had to change the heater core. And the heater core is about a 30-minute job on these trucks. They've got it to where you can pull the glove box door, get right to it, take a cover off, unhook it from the firewall, pull it out. Really no big deal. Pretty well all the newer trucks, you have to take the dash and set it in the seats to do the same thing. I just don't see the low cost of ownership when they're 25 years old like these trucks. So, to put it in a nutshell, I think the first-gen Superduties are great because they're simple enough to work on, yet new enough to have most of the modern comforts that you need. But hey, tell me your opinion. Prove me wrong. Tell me if you think another truck is better than the first-gen Superduty. As I said, they may not have the best looks, they may not have the best power, but I think they're the best package. I really look forward to hearing from you. And if you've got time, stay and watch another video. And if you can, hit that like and subscribe button. Appreciate you, bye.